Hello, Daphne here with another video for you. This time the interview is with my husband, who has reluctantly agreed to be interviewed, and probably not one of his favorite things to do, but I twisted his arm, so he is going to share with you some of his thoughts about worldwide travel. And I have prepared a list of questions for him. So, my darling, what is your most memorable travel experience?
Well, probably my first trip ever. I was about 8, maybe I was 9, I can't remember exactly. And it was a family trip. The only time we ever took a trip as a family growing up. So I get on my first airplane. I'm with my 2 sisters and my parents. And we go to Southern California. We land and are escorted to a helicopter at the airport. We get in the helicopter, we take off, and we're flying over L.A. I guess it's L.A., I don't know. And it's really, really noisy. And the other thing is, as I'm looking out the window, I'm shocked that almost everybody has a swimming pool. And when I grew up, I didn't even know anybody who had a swimming pool. So we finally land at the Disneyland Hotel. And we're being escorted to our room. And we're walking by the pool, and my 2 sisters are starting to squeal and giggle and point because they didn't see Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward sitting around the pool. I didn't even know who they were, but they were excited. We get to our room, and after a while in the room, I've learned something new. It's called room service. I didn't know about room service. So I've decided that I want to get a Coca-Cola. And I got my 2 sisters one as well. So we got 3 Coca-Colas. I pick up the phone and I call. The guy comes with 3 Cokes, glasses of ice. He says that'll be $3. I'm shocked, of course, because where I came from, I could have gone to a vending machine and bought a Coke for 10 cents. And I've only got $4 in my pocket. Then my father says, you got to give the guy a tip. So now I'm broke, and I've got 3 Coca-Colas. I only get to drink one of them. Anyway, that was my first ever trip, my first flight, my first helicopter ride. Seeing all those pools. Now I'm paying $1 for a Coca-Cola. And in the morning, I'm going to get up and go to Disneyland. So it's quite a day. So I think that would be my most memorable, is my first.
Okay, well, that's an interesting story. Do you like to go places that are different or the same place each time?
If I'm going to travel, I'm going to go to different spots every time. If not, I'm not 100%, but there may be in that trip might be something I've done before, but in the main, that trip is going to be different than any other trip before, and different spots, different culture, different situation. However, in the U.S., we used to spend a lot of summers and an occasional winter or two in Jackson Hole, and we had a house there, and we'd spend a lot of time. We had such a great spot. That was when we first got there. If there was a traffic jam, it was because there was bison crossing the road. Now, if you go there, it's a traffic jam morning, noon, and night because there's way, way too many people trying to get into Yellowstone and Teton National Parks. So it's no fun anymore because it's so all-encompassing of people that it's packed. Anyway, if it's local, there's a few spots I'd like to go back to. If it's international, I like to try something new every time.
Do you ever try and learn a few new words in the foreign land that you're traveling to?
Well, yes, a little. Just enough, hopefully. I mean, that's not always accurate, but hopefully just enough words. It doesn't take very many. So I can explain to the taxi driver where I want to go. So I can say where we're staying, whether it's a hotel or someone's apartment. Just so the taxi driver gets us to the right place the first time around. We don't get, off into some other So if I can convince a taxi driver that we're going somewhere, then I've learned the language. I've learned all I need to know.
Now, this is an interesting question. What is the most difficult airport to pass through security? Or actually, I should say, what is the most interesting experience you've had traveling through a quote-unquote airport all over the world?
Probably leaving Botswana in a private plane, just Daff and I and the pilot. We're leaving Botswana going to South Africa. We get to the border and you have to land, and he's got to get his paperwork stamped, and they're supposed to, stamp our whatever, passport or something. So we land and there's nobody there. And so we get out of the plane. We're walking around looking for people because we can't find anybody. And it's a good 10, 15 minutes before we find some people at the very back of this little area, this border station, whatever you call it. We finally find somebody who gets up and walks back to his desk and stamps his paperwork. Doesn't bother with that at all. Didn't care, I guess. And we finally get back on the plane. We take off. That took about 20, maybe 25 minutes. So that was the longest getting through security, even though there wasn't any. And then we, just as a footnote to this, we land at a runway, because you don't land at airports in Africa. You land you do if you're going to a city, but when you're out and about, you land at landing strips. And maybe there is a pole with a sock on it, so you know which direction the wind's blowing. But other than that, that's it. And we land. The pilot comes in and has to buzz the strip because there's a couple zebras on it. So they run off, and we land, and there's nobody there. We know that the people that the lodge we're staying at know how we're getting there, and they would be waiting for us. So we tell him it's the wrong landing strip. He gets out his maps, and after a minute or two, he says, "There's another one about 10 miles from here." We said, "Well, that's probably it. Let's go." So we take off again. We turn around, take off again. And we land at that one, and there they are waiting, people in jeeps, and to take us to the lodge and take care of us, which I thought was great. So it's, it's not normal, but it's interesting, and it's part of the adventure.
And one of the funny things that they said to us when we landed was, "What took you so long?"
Yeah, that's
and
right.
So we could tell them the story about landing at the wrong airport and why we were late, because usually those charter flights are on time. But so we had an interesting story to tell how we got lost.
Of course, this wasn't actually a charter flight. This was just a little private plane with one pilot and 2 passengers.
That's true. We had hired the plane, so you're right. It wasn't a charter flight. What is your favorite meal in a foreign country or outside the United States?
There's been a lot of them, actually, but the one that comes to mind, so I guess I'll mention it first, is when we were on Vancouver Island. It's over the Christmas holidays. It's Christmas Day. It's late in the late afternoon, early evening. We're going to have Christmas dinner at the Empress. So as we go to the restaurant, they get us to our little table for 2, and we're right next to the fireplace, which is roaring and looks great. And we both ordered Arctic char, which we'd never heard of or seen or tasted before. And it's a fresh fish that comes out of northern British Columbia rivers. And that meal and that ambiance and the wine that night was maybe the most perfect I've ever experienced. So I guess that's top of mind when you ask that question.
Okay, now I know that this was something that scared us all, but it was a very, very instant, quick thing that happened. And it goes in the category of what's the scariest thing that ever happened to you on a trip anywhere in the world?
Probably what scared me was this. We're in Africa. It's on we're in a Jeep. We're out cruising around. The driver slows way down. There's a snake crossing our path. And that snake just kind of moves along like a snake. And then all of a sudden, it leans itself up against this huge boulder right next to the Jeep. And this snake is 6 feet tall. And it looks straight up, just like it was standing up all of a sudden. And disappeared as fast as it did that. I've never seen anything that quick. I mean, it was just lightning fast. And the driver turns to me and said, "That was a black mamba. It's the deadliest snake in all of Africa." And I'm not a snake fan to begin with. So, and it made me nervous through the whole time, even though it only lasted a couple, 3 or 4 seconds. And it, I was concerned, seriously concerned, but, it went away. So, and I told the driver he should, maybe put it into 3rd gear and let's get out of here.
Okay, what is the reasons that you feel travel is so important?
Well, there's a lot of different reasons for that, because I do think it's important. All of the standard, cultural changes, and getting to know, most people who grow up in the United States never leave it. And that's too bad, because the United States is not the only place on this planet. It's a great place, but not the only one. Europeans, Africans, Asians, they all travel a lot to different countries all the time. International companies U.S. companies that are international rarely ever hire an American for a foreign office job. They'll hire South Africans, they'll hire Europeans, Asians, out of their own country, but not U.S. people, because U.S. people don't travel enough. And I think there's a lot of college kids today that would have much better off spending all the money they spent to get their liberal arts degree if they spent 3 or 4 years traveling and working part-time around the world. They would come back much stronger, much smarter, and better grounded than anybody and any of their friends who just sat there for 4 years reading a book in college. I mean, it's amazing, the growth, the knowledge, and the security and inner security that you can get from knowing you've been somewhere else and experienced it. It's good fun, and it's also smart.
Well, thank you, my darling, for reluctantly agreeing to this interview.